My name is Andrea, and this isn't a story for the faint-hearted. This is the kind of truth that twists in your gut and hardens your voice. I don't tell it for sympathy. I tell it because I survived and because they never expected that I would. They thought I was weak. They mistook my silence for stupidity, my kindness for obedience. But beneath my skin was fire, and when they lit the match, they forgot one simple rule: fire doesn't die quietly. It started on a bitter December morning in Rochester, New York, just weeks after our return from a trip to Toronto, Canada. We were supposed to be celebrating our first year of marriage, me and Marcus Landon, the man who sold me fairy tales with a silver tongue and eyes like polished glass. The kind of man who knew exactly how to make you feel like you were the only woman alive. Until you realized he was rehearsing lines he'd said to many before you. Marcus came from money. Not the flashy kind, but the old kind, the type that hides behind ivy-covered gates and secret family trusts. His family's house was a sprawling, pale gray colonial monster perched on the edge of an icy hill. It had 3 stories, 7 bedrooms, and not a single warm corner. The walls whispered at night. The floorboards sighed under your feet. I never felt at home in that place, and maybe that was the point. His mother, Margaret, made it clear from the beginning that I wasn't what she wanted for her golden boy. She said I was rough around the edges, too emotional, too ambitious for a woman. What she meant was, I was from Cleveland, didn't come with a trust fund, and refused to be told when to sit and smile. I had worked my way up as a freelance designer, grinding through night classes and side jobs until I could afford my first apartment and later, my own name on a small design firm in the heart of Rochester. I came into the marriage with $50,000 in savings and the kind of independence Margaret mistook for arrogance. I didn't care. I wasn't there to please her. Still, I tried. I played the doting wife. I cooked. I laughed at their dinner parties. I swallowed my discomfort every time Marcus brushed off my concerns with a smirk. I even went on that godforsaken trip to Canada, thinking we might rediscover something real. But that weekend, in a luxury hotel suite overlooking the lake, I watched him text someone constantly, his phone tilted away from me, his body stiff whenever I asked who it was. Work, he said. It always was. A week after we got home, everything changed. I remember that morning like a nightmare playing on loop. I woke up in our bed only. It wasn't morning. It was nearly 6 p.m. The room was dark. My limbs felt like cement. My head throbbed, and there was a metallic taste in my mouth. I tried to sit up and winced. My wrists were bruised, and there was a bump on the back of my head. Marcus was sitting in the armchair by the window, sipping a glass of whiskey, watching me like a man who was trying not to smile too hard. You slipped, he said calmly. In the bathroom. You've been out most of the day. Margaret walked in behind him, carrying a tray with tea I didn't ask for. She set it on the table and tilted her head. Poor, confused Sarah, she muttered. That name stopped me cold. Sarah? My name is Andrea. I caught the way Marcus's jaw twitched. Margaret didn't even flinch. I let it go for the moment. My instincts told me to stay quiet. I sipped the tea. I smiled weakly. I asked if someone could bring me a heating pad for my neck. But deep inside, something cracked open, that name, that look. The fact that no one called for help, no mention of a hospital, just, you slipped. I had bruises, I had a concussion, and no one cared. That night I pretended to sleep. I lay still in the dark, eyes half-lidded, listening to the sounds of the house, the creak of the stairs, the distant hum of the heater. Then voices low, urgent, coming from the study downstairs. The door was cracked just enough for the hallway light to cast a strip across the floor. I rolled out of bed slowly, careful not to make a sound, and crept to the top of the stairs. I'll never forget what I heard. She won't remember a thing, Marcus said. His voice was cold, confident. She's a liability, Margaret replied sharply. If the car accident doesn't finish it, the doctors will just call it a psychotic break. No one will believe her. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. My mouth went dry. Car accident? Psychotic break? They were talking about me. They thought I was unconscious when they drugged me. They thought I would either die or forget everything. But I heard it. I heard all of it. That name, Sarah, it wasn't a slip. It was a memory. A mistake. The next day, I began searching. Slowly, methodically. I didn't ask questions, I didn't accuse, I smiled, I played dumb. But when Margaret left the house to run errands, I broke into the attic and searched every corner until I found a dusty box behind an old trunk. Inside were yellowing newspapers, accident reports, and a death certificate. Sarah Landon Marcus's first wife. Dead 2 years ago in a tragic highway crash near Buffalo. No foul play. Closed case. The photos showed twisted metal and flames. The caption read, "Driver lost control in icy conditions." Sarah had no family left. Just like me, it hit me, then I wasn't the first. And I knew I wouldn't be the last. But I had something Marcus never expected. I was still alive. And I remembered everything. Now I wasn't just planning to survive. I was going to burn their perfect little world to the ground. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I lay in bed with my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, listening to the groans of the old house and the faint rustle of wind scratching the window panes. Every muscle in my body was taut, coiled like wire. I could hear Marcus breathing softly beside me, the same man who only hours ago had calmly plotted my murder. And his mother? Margaret had the audacity to kiss my cheek goodnight before slipping into the guest room, whispering, "Sleep well, dear," like I wasn't already halfway to hell. I wanted to scream. I wanted to claw their faces off. But instead I stayed perfectly still because I knew something they didn't. I wasn't confused. I wasn't broken. I was awake. By morning, I had my first rule. No one can know I know. I slipped into the role like a second skin. I wore my robe and slippers. I kissed Marcus lightly on the cheek. At breakfast, I smiled through gritted teeth and asked Margaret to pass the jam like nothing had changed. She was watching me, of course. Her eyes flicked to mine like a hawk searching for a wounded mouse. But I gave her nothing. My smile never cracked. My hands never shook. That morning, as I washed dishes at the sink, I saw my reflection in the window above the basin. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked dangerous, cold, focused. She was me. The new me. My plan began with surveillance. I ordered a small audio recorder online, a $40 model that was small enough to fit behind a row of books. I used a fake name and had it shipped to a PO box I opened under my maiden name in Buffalo. It took 3 days to arrive. 3 days of pretending to be the oblivious, grateful housewife. 3 days of Marcus humming in the shower and Margaret floating around the house like a witch in pearls, all while I rehearsed their deaths in my mind. When they both left the house one afternoon, Marcus claiming a late meeting in Syracuse, Margaret off to get her hair done, I moved fast. I slipped into Marcus's study, opened the hidden cabinet beside the fireplace, and nestled the recorder right behind the whiskey decanter where they liked to pour drinks and plot my demise. Then I left, heart racing, fingers shaking from adrenaline. Later that week I upped the ante, his laptop. Marcus, for all his smugness, had the digital security of a bored teenager. 1 password, no 2-factor authentication. Just his birthday and the first letter of his last name. I used a bootable USB and Python scripts I had saved from an old freelance gig. It took 10 minutes to crack into his inbox. The first thing I saw was a folder named SL Accident Archive. SL Sarah Landon. The ex-wife, the one who died. The one whose name Margaret had mistakenly called me after drugging me into unconsciousness. My stomach churned as I opened the folder, unsure if I was ready for what I'd find, but I had no choice. I had started this war. The folder was full of receipts payments to a private investigator based in London, surveillance reports on Sarah's habits, maps of her driving routes. There were photos of her car before the crash, detailed notes about the highway's blind curve. And then at the bottom of a Word doc, she signed the prenup. No children, insurance payout $1.5 million. My vision went white. He had done this before. She had no family, just like me. And no children, just like me. He had targeted her, isolated her, killed her, and walked away with $1 million check and no questions asked. But I wasn't Sarah. I wasn't going to die quietly. I began quietly draining our savings $1,500 here. $2,000 there, carefully transferred into a private account I created with a bank in Boston, again under my maiden name. Every transaction was spaced days apart, and none large enough to trigger alerts. In 6 weeks, I had moved $42,000 and converted half of it to pounds, which I stashed with an old college friend in London who owed me favors. If I had to vanish, I'd be ready. Then came the observation phase. If they could watch me, I'd watch them. Margaret had a routine. Every Thursday, she drove to Albany claiming she volunteered at a local museum, but that was a lie. I followed her one day, parking 2 blocks away. I wore sunglasses and a hoodie, walking like a stranger in my own life. She met a man in a tailored gray coat at a small cafe near the courthouse. They sat in the back, speaking in low voices. I took photos. I zoomed in on the documents they exchanged: bank forms, notarized pages, something that looked like a death certificate with my name. Marcus was easier, predictable, arrogant. He started sleeping with his assistant, Lily, a tall, bottle blonde intern who laughed at all his jokes and wore skirts short enough to scream desperation. I caught them together in the parking garage of his firm, their silhouettes pressed against the tinted windows of his Mercedes. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel betrayal. I felt relief, disgust, but most of all, power. Every mistake they made gave me leverage. Every lie they told stacked another card in the tower I planned to collapse on top of them. I documented everything. Audio recordings, screenshots, photographs, even audio from the house. Margaret muttering to herself in the kitchen about lawyers and liabilities. Marcus speaking on the phone to someone named Neek, saying phrases like, "She's almost ready, we just need the papers signed." I saved everything on encrypted drives stored in different locations across the state. One in my gym locker. One in a safe deposit box in Buffalo. One mailed to my cousin in Denver. They were building a noose. But I was weaving one of my own. I wasn't just going to run. I wasn't going to survive. No, that would be too kind. Too clean. I wanted retribution. I wanted pain. I wanted them to know, minute by minute, that everything they had tried to take from me was about to turn to ash in their mouths. I wanted to see Marcus behind bars. I wanted to watch Margaret's name dragged through the tabloids. And I wanted them both to know exactly who had destroyed them. Me. Andrea. The woman they thought they could kill. It was strange how silence could feel loud in a house like that, every creak a confession. Every gust of wind pressing against the windows like a whisper of what used to be. I walked the hallways with a new kind of purpose, not as a wife, not even as a survivor, but as a predator. And this house? It was my hunting ground now. I wasn't afraid anymore, because I wasn't alone. I had Sarah. The ghost of Marcus's first wife haunted everything from the untouched guest room with floral bedding that looked too pristine, to the darkened library where dust-covered volumes she once annotated in the margins. Sarah's presence lingered like perfume that had soaked into the walls. And it all truly began the day I found her journal. Marcus was in Chicago, allegedly consulting with a client, though I knew he was likely with Lily, the assistant he thought I hadn't noticed. Margaret had taken a train to Philadelphia for a charity gala. I had the house to myself, something rare and dangerous for them. I had been searching for days, pretending to reorganize the linen closet. That's when I noticed a wooden panel in the back that was slightly loose. I yanked it open, arms trembling, and reached into the dusty void. I pulled out a weathered shoebox wrapped in a brittle towel. Inside, I found it. A red leather journal, initials pressed in gold on the cover. SL. My breath caught. For a moment, I couldn't move. My hands trembled as I opened it. The entries began like love letters, but they changed quickly.
He's charming, but I'm scared of him now. Margaret watches me when I eat.
I think they're drugging me. Sometimes I wake up and don't remember what day it is. If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Marcus knows how to make things look clean. Each page was a descent into a waking nightmare. The entries grew shorter, sloppier. Near the end, the handwriting shifted into a shaky scrawl. Sarah had known they were closing in, and then, on the final page, Julian Stokes, $10,000, Canada, witness. I didn't recognize the name. But I knew exactly what it meant. She had tried to fight back. My pulse kicked up. I took a photo of every page and sealed the journal in a new container, hidden in a spot I would never say aloud. That night I lit a candle in the study. I stared out at the snow-covered yard, thinking about her. The life she never got to live, the silence they forced on her. I wasn't just angry, I was enraged. And rage has a way of sharpening focus. I contacted a woman I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, a hacker I met at a tech convention in Montreal. We had bonded over whiskey and bad exes. She went by the alias Switchblade and owed me a favor. I need you to find someone, I said.
His name is Julian Stokes, probably in Canada.
Might have been a driver for Marcus Landon, fired before his wife died. There was a pause on the line. Does this have to do with family? She asked. The Landons? Yeah, I said. And I'm going to bury them. Within 24 hours, she had a file for me. Julian Stokes. Age 45, mechanic, lives in Ottawa, former private driver for Marcus. Fired 3 months before Sarah's death. Quiet record, clean background, kept his head down. I didn't wait. I told Marcus I was flying to Boston to meet a design client. He barely looked up from his phone when I said goodbye. That was the moment I realized just how arrogant he was. He truly believed I was still under control, still confused, still drugged. It almost made me laugh. I booked a one-way ticket to Ottawa, changed clothes in the airport bathroom, and went straight to the address Switchblade gave me. Julian lived above a tire shop, modest, worn down. I knocked, heart hammering. He opened the door. Tall, broad-shouldered, cautious eyes. The kind of man who'd seen too much and tried to forget most of it. I need 10 minutes, I said. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want the truth. He hesitated but eventually let me in. I sat across from him at a chipped kitchen table and slid Sarah's journal toward him. He didn't touch it at first, just stared. Then he whispered, she told me they were trying to kill her. Begged me to help her go to the police. Why didn't you? She called the next day and told me to forget everything. Her voice was different, slow. I knew she'd been drugged. And then she died. I didn't want to be next. I reached into my coat and pulled out an envelope. $5,000 in clean, untraceable bills. It hit the table with a soft thud. I don't need you to die for this, I said. But I do need your story, a video, your face, your voice, the date, the place. I need people to see it wasn't just an accident. He picked up the envelope, counted it. Then he nodded. We recorded it on his laptop. He spoke clearly, carefully. He admitted everything. Marcus's erratic behavior, Sarah's fear. The fact that he was fired after refusing to lie to an insurance investigator. I took the video, backed it up 3 ways, and emailed it to a trusted lawyer I knew in Dallas, a woman with more bite than most prosecutors and a personal vendetta against men like Marcus. I flew home that night with a fire in my chest. But what I learned next only stoked it higher. While combing through Marcus's old email backups, I found a trail that led to Switzerland. A woman named Elise Meyer. She had died in a skiing accident 8 years ago. The autopsy said, fall from height. Guess who had been there on that trip? Marcus. Guess who inherited her 250,000 pounds estate? Marcus. My hands clenched into fists. He wasn't a one-time monster.
He was a pattern, a predator. And this time?
He picked the wrong woman. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Sarah. It was about Elise. And God knows how many others had been silenced by Marcus. Landon's perfect reputation and Margaret's obsession with legacy. But I wasn't going to be silenced. No more hiding. No more pretending. It was time to bring war to their doorstep. The day I set everything in motion was unnaturally warm for March in New York, a kind of heat that comes too early and makes everything feel just slightly off, like the world is holding its breath. I woke before the sun, dressed in silence, and stepped outside barefoot into the dew-soaked grass. I walked the perimeter of the house slowly, letting the sharp chill of the earth sting the solace of my feet. This house had caged me, drugged me, nearly buried me. But I wasn't going to let it hold the last word. No, that house was going to burn. And I would be the one to strike the match. First, I needed to take care of Margaret. I sent her a text around 10 a.m., lunch. Just us. I want to talk honestly. She responded almost immediately with a dry, about time. I knew she wouldn't be able to resist the idea that I'd finally broken, that I was coming to grovel. That her manipulation had won. She always underestimated me. Always believed her cruelty would outlast whatever strength I could muster. We met at a sleek restaurant in Manhattan, one of her favorites. Crystal chandeliers, overpriced salads, and a wine list that read more like a European history textbook. She wore an ivory jacket and pearls, her eyes scanning me like a hawk sizing up a wounded rabbit. I smiled like prey. "I've been thinking of moving to Seattle," I told her, sipping iced water with a trembling hand I faked. "I need time, distance, space to figure out who I am again." Her lips twitched into the smoothest little smile I've ever seen. "You deserve a long rest," she said sweetly, as if I were already half dead. And then I did it. I pulled out a manila envelope from my purse and slid it across the table. She hesitated. She hadn't expected this. That alone made me grin. Inside were copies of Julian Stokes' video confession, photos of Marcus and Lily, his assistant, caught in compromising positions, a digital copy of the last page of Sarah's journal with Margaret's name linked directly to the forged insurance claim, and the name of a detective in Toronto reopening the original file on Sarah Landone's death. She looked up from the papers, face pale, and hissed through clenched teeth, "You're bluffing." I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "You think I've spent the last 3 months sleepwalking? That I'm still drugged and fragile? I've got everything, Margaret. Your voice, his plans, bank statements, witnesses, all tied to your name. And here's the best part, your signature is on every insurance form. You're not just a witness, you're an accomplice." I stood. "Enjoy your wine. It'll be the last time you drink it in public with your name still intact." I walked out of that restaurant with my spine straight and my heart thudding like a war drum. She didn't follow me. She didn't call. She already knew it was over. That night, I made it easy for Marcus. I didn't scream. Didn't pack bags or start a fight. I just left. No note, no suitcase, no goodbye. Just an email scheduled to send at 6 a.m. the next morning, titled, "Truth." It went to everyone: Marcus's law firm partners, the board of Margaret's charity, his friends, his rivals, even the country club members who never remembered my name but always asked how Marcus was. It included attachments of every recording, every document, every transaction, and Julian's statement. At the end of the message was a quote taken directly from Sarah's final journal entry. "He always said no one would believe me. But someone will, eventually, and when they do, I hope they bring fire with them." I was that fire. Marcus didn't call.
He didn't send a single message. That told me everything.
The next morning, I sat in a quiet cafe 2 blocks from his office. I drank black coffee and watched the local news on the wall-mounted screen. The headline broke just after noon. Prominent Rochester attorney arrested in murder conspiracy fraud scheme. Marcus Landon, perfect golden boy, was escorted from his office in handcuffs. His face was red, jaw locked. I imagine the arrogance didn't survive the snap of the cuffs around his wrists. 2 days later, Margaret was arrested at her home. She wore sunglasses and a scarf like a desperate socialite trying to pretend she still mattered, but the cameras didn't care. The world already knew the truth. I made sure of it. I had already sold the house to a demolition company for a laughably small sum. I didn't care about the money. I didn't want a single cent of what had soaked into the bones of that place. Let the termites and bulldozers rip apart the lies brick by brick. I watched it fall from a hilltop a few weeks later. The walls came down with a groan, the roof collapsed like a dying animal. And then the dust settled. The house, like the people who built it, was finally nothing. I left Rochester with a single suitcase and a brand new name, Andrea Winters. Now I live in Savannah, Georgia, in a small townhouse with thick walls, soft sheets, and windows that I leave open all night. I work quietly under a pseudonym, freelancing and offering free services to women who need to disappear from men like Marcus. I've helped 6 so far. One of them was pregnant. Another was 18. I don't sleep with one eye open anymore. Because they can't hurt me now. They tried to make me a statistic. A footnote. A tragedy tucked away behind a police report and a forged signature, but I was never their victim. I was their punishment. And if Marcus ever gets out, if he ever so much as sets foot in a courtroom again, I've already planted the next seed. There are voices waiting, files saved, survivors gathering. He'll never walk freely again, not as long as I breathe. Sometimes I think of Sarah, of Elise, of the woman in Switzerland whose death was also written off and cleaned up. I wonder if they're watching me. I hope they are. Because the fire stopped here, they killed the wrong woman. And I made damn sure they'd never forget it.